Good morning, dear students. Let's start the lesson I Want Something in a Cage, where we left in part 1. The man's shiny shoes squeaked forward. His suit was cheap, ill-fitting, but obviously new. Suddenly, when Mr. Purcell was sitting, one visitor came in his shop. This time, the visitor's shoes were shining. His suits were looking new, but ill-fitted, but not fitting quite properly. He had a shutting glance and close-cropped hair. His hair were absolutely short-cropped, meaning short hair. Ignoring Purcell for the moment, he rolled his gaze around the shadowy shop. Though he entered in Mr. Purcell's shop, generally people start talking with the shopkeeper, but he did not talk to the shopkeeper at once, but started looking for the shop. He had started searching something in the shop. "A nasty morning," volunteered the shopkeeper. The shopkeeper said that today morning is not good. He clasped both hands across his melon-like stomach and smiled importantly. "I see by the paper we are in for a cold spell now. What was it you wanted?" See, weather is the very safe choice to start talking about. He wanted to attract his attention towards him, so he said that he started talking about weather. That I have read in the newspaper that the morning going to be very cold one. The day is going to be very cold now. Then he said, "Please tell me, what do you want?" The man stared closely at Mr. Purcell, and though just not aware of his presence, he said, "I want something in a cage." Now he looked towards Mr. Purcell and he just said that, "I want something in a cage." "Something in a cage?" Mr. Purcell was a bit confused. "You mean some sort of pet?" Now Mr. Purcell got confused because likewise nobody asked anything. He said, "You want something in a cage? It means you want any pet." "I mean what I said," snapped the man. "Something in a cage, something that is small." Now the visitor said, "I wanted what I said right now. I want something in a cage. It means I want something very small." "I see," hastened the shopkeeper, not at all certain that he did. His eyes narrowed gravely and he pursed his lips. "No, now let me think. A white rat, perhaps? I have some very nice white rats." He said, Oh, it means you want white rats. I have very nice white rats. So do you want rats?" He said, "No," said the man. "Not rats, something with wings, something that flies." He said, "No, I don't want rats. I want something which have wings, which can fly." "So a bird," exclaimed Mr. Purcell. Mr. Purcell said, "Okay, then you want birds?" "A bird, all right." The customer pointed suddenly to a suspended cage which contained 2 snowy birds, doves. "How much for those?" He said, "Yes, birds will work." Then he looked toward 2 snowy doves and then he asked the price of those 2 doves. 55 came the prompt answer, and a very reasonable price. "That are a fine pair." Now the shopkeeper said that 55 and it's very reasonable price. 55? The man was obviously crestfallen. He hesitatingly produced a $5 bill. "I'd like to have those birds, but this is all I have got, just $5. The man showed $5 note and he said, "I want those birds, but I have only these $5. And he kept it there. Mentally, Mr. Purcell made a quick calculation which told him that a 50-cent reduction, he would still reap a tidy profit. He smiled magnanimously. Now Mr. Purcell made his calculation. that though it is 50 cents less, but still he was obviously absolutely sure that he was going to have a big profit out of it. My dear man, if you want them that badly, you can certainly have them for $5. Now he said, because he had calculated that he is going to get profit out of it. So he said, okay man, if you are so desperately willing to have these doves, you can have it. I will take them. He laid his $5 on the counter. Mr. Purcell tottered on tiptoe, unlocked the cage and handed it to his customer. He said, okay, I am going to take it. Now Mr. Purcell took with his tiptoe slippers, he went there, he took the doves and he handed it over to the man. The man cocked his head to one side, listening to the constant chittering and rustling scurry of the shop. That noise, he blurted, doesn't it get you hurt? Now the visitor, he was listening towards the sound of shop. So he said, doesn't it bother you? It's very noisy. Your shop is very noisy. Noise? What noise? Mr. Purcell looked surprised because Mr. Purcell was in habit of remaining in that noise every time. So for him, it was not at all noisy. So he said, what noise? No noise is there. He could hear nothing unusual. For Mr. Purcell, the shop was not at all noisy. It was very common. The customer glared. I mean, all this caged stuff drives you crazy, doesn't it? He said, I mean this, all the caged stuffs, meaning all the birds and animals, they must be making you crazy enough, isn't it? Mr. Purcell drew back. Either the man was insane or drunk. He said hesitatingly, yes, certainly, I guess so. Now Mr. Purcell wanted to get rid of that man because already he had got the benefit and he thought the man had intoxicated or he was mad. So he just said, yes, I think so.